The Detroit Pistons have straight up lost their minds, as there have been a multitude of reports that have dropped revealing their interest in Pascal Siakam and quote that they are going all in on win now players, particularly like Siakam. So we're going to dive into everything that these reports have to say because frankly, I think it is absolutely insane because the Pistons, again, have the league's worst record. They had that historic losing streak, and somehow, some way, they think it's a smart idea to give up the farm to acquire win now players. So we'll see what that ends up coming to, break down whether or not it's an actual possibility, if it makes any sense for the Toronto Raptors, and dive into the absurdity of it all. But before we do that, folks, over 56% of our viewers are not subscribed to the channel, so it would mean the world to me if you guys could hit that subscribe button. You guys have been crushing as of late, so if you want to continue with this daily Toronto Raptors coverage, definitely hit that subscribe button. But let's dive into this madness, because again, we have a lot of reports coming out linking Pascal Siakam to the Detroit Pistons, and it makes zero sense. So basically, the first one's coming from Jake Fisher saying the Detroit Pistons are looking to buy win now players and could show an interest in Pascal Siakam. The Pistons keep signaling to opposing executives an interest in buying, sources have said, instead of selling off veterans from the league's lowest ranked team. So again, that is frankly madness. You look at the Detroit Pistons right now in the standings, and they are 3-32. I mean, they have half the wins of the Washington Wizards. I don't even know how that's possible given how bad the Wizards have been this season, but I guess when you have the league's historic most losing streak, that was snapped by the Toronto Raptors, unfortunately, it makes you do some crazy things. Some wild ideas start popping in the front office, and maybe I get the logic a little bit. I get it an ounce because the Pistons are so bad. Even during tanking years, you want to have some moments of hope, some moments of joy for the fans, but the Pistons just continue to lose. Doesn't seem like there's any actual development going on for the younger guys like Cade Cunningham, like Jaden Ivey, like a Duran, like any of those players they have currently on that roster. So bringing in some win now dudes can at least reshape the culture just a little bit, so maybe they can make a push for next season. I mean, the Pistons were hoping to make a little playoff run this year. That's why they didn't deal away Bojan Bogdanovic for 2 first-round picks last season. They thought they had a little core group in there that could potentially make a run. They gave Monty Williams that insane coaching salary, and somehow, some way, they have the league's worst record and a historically bad season. But that's not the only report that came out, as basically we also heard from NBA Trade Report that the Pistons will be, quote, all in on Toronto's Pascal Siakam as the NBA trade deadline approaches. So again, NBA Trade Report has had some hits, has had some misses, not completely leaning into that. But then also from Real GM, basically the Pacers, Kings, and Pistons are considered to be the most likely trade partners for the Raptors on Pascal Siakam. So again, I dove into why it doesn't really make sense for the Detroit Pistons to be all in on win now guys or anything along those lines. But I mean, why on earth would they specifically be going after Pascal Siakam? Because if you're making that type of deal, if you want to get some win now players, don't go after a guy that's entering unrestricted free agency and has made it known that he will not sign a contract extension immediately after getting traded to a team. The Detroit Pistons may have had better luck with OG Anunoby, giving his desire to have a bigger role, given the cap space that the Pistons actually have to offer, but Siakam's getting a max wherever he goes. No team is trading for him without the idea, the consideration that he's not receiving a max contract. His resume's too strong. Some team is giving him a max. So, the Pistons don't have the leverage of money. Then they also really don't have the leverage of providing him with a more winning situation. Pascal Siakam said all he really wants to do is go to a place where he's having fun, wants to have fun with basketball. He believes he can do that with the Toronto Raptors. Winning changes everything and stuff along those lines. You're not having fun with the Detroit Pistons right now. And frankly, it doesn't seem like fun is on the horizon whatsoever for that Pistons team, even though they do have some young players. So why on earth would they be going after Pascal Siakam, go all in if they don't have assurances he's going to stay? I mean, he's going to leave. It makes zero sense. No reason whatsoever for him to stay with that group. Maybe his connection to Dwayne Casey, I don't really know, but it makes zero sense for him to stay with the Pistons long term if that deal does go through. So the Pistons we have to be given up, meet the Raptors asking price, and take an insane risk, which I don't know. The Pistons have just done some insane things in the past, but even their young players don't make as much sense for the Toronto Raptors here now at this point, following the OG Anunoby trade, because I was a little bit more bullish on a potential Pistons deal if they were crazy enough to make a trade, before we ended up absolutely increasing our guard depth, but now, especially if we deal away Pascal Siakam, our front line will be diminished. The same way it currently is now at this point. We saw it last night against the Sacramento Kings. So, who do the Pistons really have on their roster? I mean, Jaden Ivey is a guy that is an interesting piece. He was really good last season for the Pistons. This year has had an inconsistent role, averaging 13 points, 3.5 rebounds, 3 assists. He's athletic, he can shoot the three, can get buckets in a hurry. Jaden Ivey's an interesting piece, and a lot more interesting if we didn't have Emmanuel Quickley. But we have Quickley on this group right now. We have Schroeder, that's a premier backup point guard in the NBA. Not that interested in Jaden Ivey here at this point. And then you also have a Sir Thompson who, just fit-wise, doesn't fit whatsoever this Raptors team now. 8 points, 7 rebounds. He can slash, he can attack, he can do his thing out there, but the lack of 3-point shooting combined, and maybe if you get rid of Pirtle, it make a little bit more sense, but he's 6'7", small forward. We have Scotty, we have RJ, we have Schroeder, we have Emmanuel Quickley. I mean, a guy that's shooting 15% from three. Again, the potential is there. A Sir Thompson wouldn't be a horrible turn, wouldn't be a guy that I think is just a devastating package to get back in a Pascal Siakam deal, but, just solely off potential alone. But in terms of what he's actually providing in terms of fit, doesn't really make sense, especially how this new looked Raptors younger group, like future timeline looks for this team. So the only real piece that I think would be encouraging to get back from the Detroit Pistons is a Jalen Duren, who this season's averaging 13 and 12. Again, you probably have to deal away Jakob Poeltl then at this point. You go in that younger direction. Jalen Duren is an absolute stud out there at the big man position, can play defense, isn't going to space the floor, but he's a lob threat. He finishes around the rim. He's sort of that sort of athletic prototypical center that you kind of want to sort of develop and grow with your team. So again, if a Pascal Siakam trade does end up going down, I believe it should be centered around Duren if Masai Ujiri is willing to make a trade that kind of makes sense. Obviously, the cap doesn't work out 1-for-1. You'd have to deal Pirtle then at that point, but I think you're dealing Pirtle if you trade away Pascal Siakam, making the money work, making all that sort of situation. So, I mean, unless that's the sort of package, I don't really see a return that makes sense for the Toronto Raptors. And in any world, I don't think this makes sense for the Detroit Pistons. Frankly, I'm shocked. I think it's just absurd. It's a bit crazy that they're willing to sort of even contemplate that these rumors are even coming out, because we know the Raptors rarely leak stuff unless it's to Michael Grange. And generally, they do that to Michael Grange to leak some bad info to misdirect the rest of the NBA. So the Pistons are somehow leaking this. Why on earth are they going all in for Pascal Siakam? It's not going to be an easy return. It's not going to be an easy haul. But if the Raptors can finesse just the absolute abomination of a franchise that the Detroit Pistons has been over the past decade, I mean, I'm all here for it. It would be a bad look to send Pascal to Detroit, but I think it's less so because he's an unrestricted free agent. He can leave. So there's that. That's just kind of how it goes. But let me know what you guys think about all this Toronto Raptors news. The madness, the trade reports, rumors continues to escalate. So subscribe to the Raptors Digest as we break it all down for you folks. But anyways, I'm signing out. Cheers.